I'm a firm believer that if you're seriously trying to follow the Lord, you will live a better life. But that doesn't necessarily mean an easier life. Whenever you're following the Lord, you might get called to do some very difficult things. Think of Isaiah in the first reading, who has to talk to Ahab. And that's, if you don't know his story, look up all the things that happened between him and Jezebel and Elijah. It's just terrible stuff. Elijah has to end up running for his life. Ahaz gets somebody killed over a vineyard that he wants. And so maybe if you're following the Lord, you'll be called like a prophet to go to some king or some dignitary and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong. Maybe if you're following the Lord, you might get called like Joseph was in the gospel today, that you're faced with an incredibly difficult situation that maybe you don't have all the details about because your betrothed is with child and it's not yours. You know that's for sure. Of course, he didn't know until the angel revealed to him that this was the Son of God and that he was supposed to take care of Mary and this child. But can you imagine what was going on in Joseph's heart as he heard news that Mary was with child? We get a really telling line from the gospel that because he was a righteous man, he decided he would divorce her quietly. Do you know what that means for somebody in his social status and his time period? That means social suicide. It means he would probably send Mary off to be with a distant relative somewhere so that her and the child would be taken care of, because there's no way anything's going to go well in that city because small towns talk. And Joseph would have resigned himself to say nothing about any of it. And people may have speculated and said, why did Joseph send her away? If you know anything about betrothal in those days, a man could send away the wife he is betrothed to, not yet married to, but betrothed to, for any number of reasons. He could not like her cooking and say, no, we're done. And so people would speculate, why did Joseph send Mary away? And he would have remained in silence and committed social suicide. If you got to come to the relic presentation yesterday, it was a tremendous experience, and Father Carlos, who was here, shared the story of Maria Goretti. And if you don't know that story, it's the story of a young girl who was stabbed by a young man 14 times because he wanted to have his way with her, and she said no. And even in the midst of that, it took her about a day to die from those stabbing wounds, and before she died, she forgave him. If you're going to follow the Lord, your life will be better. I will guarantee that. But it will not necessarily be easier. Because if you have the courage to follow the Lord, he will call you to do some things that are extremely challenging, like preach to people who don't want to hear it. Like maybe committing social suicide. Like maybe forgiving somebody who has wronged you deeply and is not even repentant over it. Because if you're willing to do those kinds of things, the Lord can transform lives. Maybe a prophecy will come, like it did for Isaiah, that the virgin will come and have a child. Maybe an angel will tell you that this situation is actually for the glory of God and the salvation of many. Maybe because you're able to forgive somebody who has no desire of your forgiveness, that later on in life, that person may be on the path towards canonization, because that young man who stabbed Maria Goretti to death is now being considered for sainthood. Because her yes to forgiveness was enough for a young man to finally change his heart. So if you follow the Lord, It may be difficult, but it may change the world.